Before starting today's video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video to encourage us to provide the best. Around 8 years ago, I enrolled in a community college and as a result, had long and random class schedules. After finishing my classes, I would always park my car in the church parking lot near my small house, which was located behind my parents' house. One evening, I noticed a man sitting in a green SUV parked a few cars away from mine at around 9 p.m. It struck me as strange, since no one parked there at night, but I assumed it was a one-time occurrence and didn't pay much attention to it. The following day, I returned home around 2 p.m. to find the same car in the exact same spot, with the man still sitting there doing nothing. Although I found it odd, I went inside and watched TV for a while. Later, a friend called me to go for a drive, so I left to pick her up, only to see that the man was still there, in the same spot when I returned. This continued for a couple of weeks, and he was there every day, for all hours of the day and night, even until 4 a.m. on some nights. I started feeling increasingly uneasy about it because there were many other parking spaces available, yet he always parked just 3 spaces away from mine. He must have known that I parked there since there was a gate to my house and a fence across from my usual spot. It was unsettling that he was always there, and I couldn't shake off the feeling. Finally, one day I returned home to find that the man wasn't there. Seizing the opportunity, I parked in the same spot where he would always park. However, I soon realized that this spot wasn't special. There were no additional trees, and it faced a fence. The hills on the other side were much more scenic and pleasing to look at. I stayed there for a few minutes and called a friend. Suddenly, I noticed something horrifying. I could see into every window of my house. Since I didn't have curtains and had a habit of walking around in my underwear, I was horrified to think that the man had been watching me. Despite the large fence, there was apparently no way to see into my house from the street, and I panicked. I immediately took my parents' Mastiff and kept him with me at night, and I also stopped parking in the church parking lot unless it was during the day. Instead, I parked in a different lot, even though I had to manually open a large gate to get in and then close it for the dogs. When I told my dad about the situation, he thought I was paranoid, but my mom believed me. One day, we got in her truck and followed the guy's car to get his license plate number. He got angry and stormed out of his car when he saw us. My mom confronted him, stating that he was creepy and had been watching me day and night. The man tried to explain that he was cooling down after going to the gym and listening to his tapes, but it made no sense. We contacted the police, and they visited his house, where they discovered that he was a married man with kids. At one point, I snuck along the fence where he couldn't see me and listened to him as his windows were down, but he was sitting in silence, and there were no tapes playing. The police warned him that he would be in serious trouble if they found him parked there again, and he was basically not allowed back there. Although the police sometimes receive criticism, they were very helpful during this incident and managed to scare him off. The next day, he wasn't around, and I thought it was over. Later that night, I returned home from celebrating my friend's birthday and was furious to find another car parked in the same spot. I suspected it was him, but a different car. After telling my mom, I stayed at my parents' house since I was feeling quite anxious. My mom decided to drive her car through the parking lot to see if he was still there, but after driving through, she saw that the car was empty. She thought it was a coincidence and drove past, but when she turned the car around, she saw a man getting up from a crouched position and speeding off. She decided to follow him, but he drove at high speeds, trying to lose her. He eventually went to the main road, and when they stopped at a red light, he pulled a sweatshirt over his face and covered himself with his arms so that he couldn't be seen. My mom immediately called the police, and they advised her to leave chases up to them. After that, the man never came back, and I got curtains. To this day, I'm not sure what his intentions were. I had a large, friendly 170-pound Mastiff who was protective of me, as well as a brother who was a double state championship-winning hockey player and a large father. But the only one who intimidated him was my mom. When I was 10 years old, I attended a church camp called Cherry Run. I went alone and didn't make any friends, so it was a lonely and unpleasant experience. One Wednesday evening, after the service had ended, and we had a couple of hours before curfew, I sat outside by myself reading a book in the dim light. I felt very lonely, but I tried not to let it bother me. About half an hour later, a young man came up to me. He was a tall, slightly chubby guy with greasy brown hair and icy blue eyes that I will never forget. He said that I looked sad and asked if I wanted to go to the snack bar near the dorms to get a snack. I was thrilled that someone was paying attention to me, so I agreed to go with him. At the snack bar, he bought me a candy bar and some jerky. We sat on a bench and talked for a while, and I felt content. Although I had an odd feeling about him, I decided to ignore it because he was so friendly. He suggested we play ping pong, but I was terrible at it, and it was just before curfew. When he proposed a walk, I didn't object and trailed beside him as we veered off the gravel path that circled the camp. Eventually, we arrived at an unlit section behind a girls' dorm. At first, I thought nothing of it when he asked for a hug, and I complied. But then his hand strayed from my back and went to an unsuitable place, tipping past my clothing. From there, you can imagine what happened next. I was traumatized. He made me promise to keep it a secret, saying that it would be devastating if the other campers found out how I sinned. Devastated, I agreed, feeling sick to my stomach. That night, when the lights went out, I was so frightened that he would return in the dark that I hid in the dorm bathrooms until morning. The next day, I avoided all meals and hid in various places at the camp. I didn't want to see him, and every time I did, he would give me an unsettling smile that I'll never forget. I started getting really bad pains in my stomach and would hide out in the nurse's room for hours on end. I kept his promise and never told a soul. Now, 8 years later, I live with this terrible secret that haunts me every day in dreams and flashbacks. I feel immense guilt about what happened. This happened during my childhood when I resided in La Mesa, California. I was between the ages of 5 and 7, and my family was part of a reasonably large congregation that frequently attended church services together. The atmosphere was lively, and everyone was closely connected, although there were many unfamiliar faces from time to time. As a young girl, I was always assertive, and I possessed an indomitable spirit and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. If someone told me not to go somewhere, I would be certain to explore that area anyway. I adored being alone and venturing into uncharted territory. This narrative recounts the day when I came to realize that this might not always be the best approach. It is difficult to convey how stubborn I was in general, and my parents had picked up on this, which is why they would always caution me about the concepts of danger and fear. However, I didn't fully grasp the significance of these warnings. In my mind, if something was frightening, then one should confront it and defeat it. That was my motto, I suppose. At 6 years old, I had wandered along cliffs and swam out further than I was permitted, where riptides were known to occur. But this day marked the first time in my life that I truly felt a twinge of apprehension or a tinge of fear that something dreadful was about to occur. After Sunday services at church, everyone would congregate in the courtyard, offices, or kitchen to assist in any way they could, leaving the sanctuary empty. I was forced to wait for my parents to finish up, and during that time, I would wander around the balcony where the choir sang, play with the organ, or admire the stained glass. Occasionally, I would sneak around in the back, attempting to climb up to the roof or playing where the vestments were kept. There was a section behind closed doors at the rear of the sanctuary that was separated from the raised front area, and I had been exploring there when I decided to depart. I heard someone call out to me, and as I turned, I saw a man in his 20s or 30s with scruffy blonde hair and clothing that suggested a disorganized mind. He wasn't homeless, but his appearance was casual and worn enough for me, even as a youngster, to notice that he was somewhat different. He greeted me warmly, as though we were old friends, and I recalled that I had met him previously in the same room. When people from the service began to leave and put away their things, he seemed flustered and mostly made small talk about insignificant topics before eventually departing. I couldn't recall his name or anything about him, but I greeted him politely, and we chatted. There was no one else in the room, and I knew the door on the other side was locked, so I was perplexed as to how he had gotten behind me without my knowledge. Hadn't I checked the entire area when I arrived earlier, and there had been no one there then? His inquiry as to whether everything was fine led me to respond positively, but I indicated that I had to leave because my parents were waiting for me. He implored me to wait and inquired if I wanted to hear how he was doing. Despite my reservations, I agreed, and he proceeded to request a hug, already coming in for one. I reluctantly obliged, recognizing that it was already going to happen, and didn't want him to realize how opposed I was to being close to him. I wished someone else, especially another adult, had been there with me. The thought of how unlikely it was for anyone to come in here crept into my mind. Even though the sanctuary had good acoustics, no one was close enough to hear me if I yelled. The man hung on to me for a long time during the hug, and I knew that something was wrong. I finally managed to say that I had to go, but he hesitated before letting go. As he looked down at me with slitted eyes, I tried to smile and act convincing. I hoped he would believe that I was having a good time, and then I said goodbye and turned to leave. As I walked up the steps towards the door, I felt his eyes on me, and every second felt like an eternity. I was scared that he might try to grab me and pull me back into the room. When I finally reached the sanctuary, I hurried towards the doors, and when I stepped outside, the sound of people talking and the bright sunlight made me feel relieved. Thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and sharing it to support me. The best is yet to come.